Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. With me today is Graham Farrar, co-founder, president, and chief cannabis officer of Glasshouse. Thank you very much for joining me today, Graham.
Thanks a lot for having me, David. Stoked to be here. I always enjoy reading your guys' newsletters that I get in my inbox, and happy to be on the podcast.
That's incredible to hear. Thank you so much, man. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to that daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. Graham, I always like to...
Where's the like? I always want to do the thing when you say like the push like and subscribe. Is it up above or down below? How do you...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, click the like button directly
below. Click the like
right
button
there.
And subscribe down below.
Yes. Well, thank you for that. And I always like to start the podcast with a little bit of background. So, Graham, if you could tell us, what was it that brought you to cannabis?
I love the plant. I mean, I've been in the cannabis industry since I was a sophomore in high school. And that started with smoking weed and selling weed in high school back in the old days of Santa Barbara. We used to bring weed up from San Diego and turn it into eights and joints and sell it to my friends so that I could smoke for free. And one of the things I found was that cannabis makes me a better version of myself. And it was the same for many of my friends, contrary to what the Dare Just Say No propaganda was at the time, that it was the gateway drug and the end of everything, made you fat, stupid, and lazy. I saw the opposite. And I also saw that alcohol actually did a lot of those things that people said that cannabis did. And so I liked it as a replacement for drinking on many occasions. And I'm a geek and into biology. I was a biochemistry and molecular biology major in college. And so then I got the opportunity to take my love for tech and my love for weed and put them together and into a business. And every once in a while I look back and look at the stuff like what's behind me and pinch myself on how lucky I am that I get to bring a few great loves in my life together and call it work.
Was that first cannabis venture, was that Glasshouse?
No. So my first cannabis venture, I don't know if you caught the joke there, but I was a sophomore in high school, which was about 30 years ago. So my first cannabis venture was getting QPs of weed from Mexico and turning it into eighths in Santa Barbara. My first cannabis hobby, I'll call it, was a 2 foot by 3 foot closet in Boulder, Colorado. That's when I grew my first weed plant. That was before legalization, so back in the fully illegal days. And then I came back to California, and it was right about the time that Prop 215 was kicking in. So like, kind of 1996, 1997 time zone, and did a Prop 215. First it was a room, and then it was a garage, and then it was a house, and then it was a couple houses. Those were all kind of hobby, but legal, or at least as legal as Prop 215 could have been. And then my first real cannabis business was actually a nutrient company. We made fertilizers for cannabis growers. And then 8 years ago was when Glasshouse started with our first 150,000 square foot greenhouse in the Santa Barbara County.
Okay. Yeah, I apologize for not clarifying. Was it your first venture in the legal cannabis industry?
Yeah. So Glasshouse is like the first real one. But before that, we had an ancillary picks and shovels business, which was selling fertilizer. And that's actually what got Glasshouse going.
Okay. How was it able to get Glasshouse going?
So I was selling nutrients, fertilizer, and we were selling to the market of what we thought was going to be the future of cannabis, which is not people buying from a hydroponic store, but real farmers and real greenhouses. And one of the things I found is there's many greenhouses in Santa Barbara County, or Phalaenopsis orchids and Gerber daisies and roses and things like that. And we were going to those farmers who were great growers, but knew nothing about cannabis. And we were actually teaching them to grow weed so that we could make them current customers of our fertilizer. And basically I said, well, if these are the best growers and we're teaching them, why are we teaching them how to use our fertilizer? Why aren't we just doing it? And so that got the shift from the nutrient side to being hands-on and actually getting our first greenhouse there, 2015, 16 time zone where we started things off.
What were the first few days in 2015, 2016 like?
I mean, it was very different. I mean, in some ways, it was great, right? Pricing was $1,800 a pound. You didn't have 10 different regulatory agencies crawling up everywhere. In some ways, they were distinctly more stressful, right? It was Prop 215. We had all our plants tagged. We had our patient recs. We were following all the rules, but you also didn't really, you didn't have clarity, right? We had a binder, so if the sheriff knocked on the door, here's what you do, right? And that was a legitimate concern. And many places, it was the law of the land. It was medically legal. We were doing, again, everything, strictly by the book, but the book was not necessarily one that was shared by everybody. So the idea that the wrong sheriff could show up and you could have a problem of, not a regulatory problem, but a handcuff problem, definitely made you think about things different. So, it's easy to be nostalgic. But it's also easy to forget that one thing we don't worry about anymore is, ending the night in a cage. And that's pretty nice too.
Well, the stress of that scenario chased a lot of people away from the industry. What was it that sort of strengthened your resolve and kept you in cannabis?
Um, I'm a believer that cannabis makes the world a better place. And I'm a believer, to quote my friend Jason Wild, that the truth happens. And so, or maybe Martin Luther King, where the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. So I've always firmly believed that we would get to a place that we're getting closer to, which is that cannabis isn't seen as negative, but recognized as a positive, or at the very least, a neutral, substance, but medicine for many and a good time for a lot, and a replacement for things that truly are harmful for lots of people as well. So, like I said, I believe it made the world a better place, and kind of have a firm commitment to living the life that I think is the right one to live, and that we could do it right and make it through those somewhat, scary times.
Well, from those scary beginnings, how did you grow Glass House into, the largest or one of the largest cannabis farms in California? It's the largest one, right?
Yeah, as far as I know, it's the largest cannabis greenhouse anywhere on the planet, both either in operation or at this point that's been attempted. So, I think we got big by starting small is probably the quickest summary. As I mentioned, all the way from a closet up to our first greenhouse, 150,000 square feet. At the time, we thought, that was the biggest thing in the world for cannabis. And it was, back then it was large, at least for a greenhouse. And then we got our second farm, which was 350,000 square feet. And we thought that was the biggest thing, in the cannabis greenhouse world. And again, at the time it was. Now those two farms put together would only fill up half of our nursery. So we really made a lot of mistakes, I guess, but we learned through many years of hard work and mistakes a lot of things not to do, which helps you narrow in on the things to do. And from there, we took that amazing team of people we have who all love the plant, hundreds of years of greenhouse of operation experience, put all that together, put it together with a dispensary that we opened in Santa Barbara, first ever adult use dispensary called the Pharmacy, that we opened about 4 years ago, and a couple other dispensaries that we had, and took that company public, which was an interesting experience on its own, to raise the money to buy our new SoCal farm down in Ventura, which is, one of the largest greenhouses in the country for any crop, not just cannabis. And we actually excited to announce that we had our first harvest out of our new greenhouse down there. So we've just gone from about 1 million square feet of canopy to 2 million square feet of canopy, now with about 3.5 million square feet of total production, including a nursery and our farms in Santa Barbara. So pretty growing a lot of weed and selling it faster than we can grow it, which is an exciting place to be.
I mean, that is just incredible growth. You mentioned those hard lessons. For some people that are listening that, are maybe still in that growth stage, do you have like one or two of those hard lessons that kind of sticks out as like a pivotal point, or, something that you learned a great deal from in terms of how to survive?
Yeah, I mean, I think whether you think you can and you think you can't, you're right. So a lot of it is belief in yourself and belief in the value of what you're doing and your ability to do it, I think is important. The other is grit, and there's so many things in every industry, but cannabis in particular, that you just got to make it happen no matter what that takes, right? It's easy to quit. it's hard to keep going. It's especially hard to keep going when, you've been falling and tripping, and, the cannabis industry is really good at shoving, so got a loud noise happening in the backyard there. It's really good at, tripping you with changing regulations and things like that. So you just have to keep going. And I guess I would suggest the similar path, which is not trying to go too big too fast, and starting small and getting the fundamentals right, and then growing from there.
So how much product are you producing on an annual basis?
Last year, we'll probably do about 300 and something thousand pounds of total, biomass that we sell. So that's a combination of flower, smalls, and trim. That's all the products that we sell. And then we just started, as of yesterday, harvesting our new greenhouse, and that'll raise that by about 250,000 pounds. So, we're up in we'll be on a 600,000 pounds a year run rate basis type of number.
That is incredible. How do you manage such vast cultivation and at different facilities?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is we have an amazing team. We're definitely at a size that nobody does anything by themselves. So we've got, as I mentioned, a lot of people that have been doing cannabis for a long time. One of our head growers, and he and I went to high school. We've been growing together for probably close to 25 years in some form or fashion. We've got an amazing, VP of labor who's been in greenhouse operations for 25 plus years. Was actually instrumental in building the facility at our SoCal farm. So he knows all the ins and outs of that. We've got a great maintenance team. We've got great agronomy, experts and things like that. So it really is, it's about the chemistry and the people. And anytime you get to this kind of size, like it's the interaction of the team that produces the results. And we've got a really awesome one.
You had mentioned that you're selling it faster than you can grow it. But when you have that scale, that quantity, how do you still focus on maintaining a consistent quality?
So we have a mantra, which is quality, consistency, cost. So first you got to do it great, and then you got to do it great every time, and then you got to do it great every time efficiently. So it's always kind of foremost in our mind. I think that to me, it's a false assumption that big means lower quality. I actually look at it different. Big means that we get lots of amazing tools and have the opportunity to have lots of amazing people, right? So like we automate our greenhouse and have tools that I never had and couldn't even have dreamed of back in the days of the house grows and the garage grows and things like that. We have computers, and they do things like calibrate how much nutrition they give to the plants based on how sunny it is, right? Like they never get sick. They work weekends. They're 24 hours a day, seven days a week. And like those tools allow us to drive high quality, consistent. Okay, I got crazy noises back here. Give me 1 second.
Okay. For what it's worth, I can't hear the noise.
Yeah, let's see if it gets better. That means we got some amazing noise canceling because it was like a tornado out there.
Okay.
So, we get a chance to have great tools and a great team, and that allows us to achieve not just quality, but even better quality, and do it at scale and consistently.
So you talked a little bit about the automation and those tools that you have. What are some of them that can you name any of them specifically? Some of the tools or automation that you have in house?
Yeah, so our greenhouses are all automated. We use a company called Priva, which is a greenhouse automation software and hardware company, and I mean it's amazing. So like two of our flower greenhouses in Camarillo, they're positive pressure, which means they force the air into it. They're automated, be it the fan speed, radiator, CO2 levels, blackout curtains, the vents, all that. We give basically set points and things that we're targeting. And then the computer does its best to set things up in a way to achieve those, regardless of what Mother Nature is doing outside. Another interesting tool is we have roof washing robots, right? We grow with the sun. So we use the one lighter in the sky, which is awesome because you get great quality. It also doesn't have any environmental cost. And it saves you a ton of money, which means you can give consumers a better weed for a better value. That's great. But if your roof's dirty, you can lose 5 or 10% of that light. So we have roof washing robots that scrub the glass and make sure that we can get all of the sun from that is available into the plants, right? So an amazing tool that makes us more efficient, higher yields, lower costs, better, more environmentally friendly. We have ebb and flood floors. So that's a way that we irrigate, where we can irrigate hundreds of thousands of plants at once with automation, totally consistent, no labor required. Again, calibrated by the computer. So if it's a sunny day, it gives it more water. If it's a cloudy day, plants photosynthesize less, they drink less, it gives it less water. So again, these things are all calibrated and running 24/7. We just have amazing tools and an amazing team that knows how to drive them.
So I apologize for my ignorance, but is this roof cleaning robot like a roof Roomba?
It actually looks more like a inside out car wash is how I would describe it. So it's a robot that goes on the roof, and it has scrub brushes and spray hoses. So like you would see in a car wash, and it's in the shape of the roof. So it just goes along the peaks and scrubs the glass each night and makes sure that we can get all that sun into the greenhouse as efficiently as possible.
One thing that we hear frequently is that often people are skeptical to bring these tools in house, and I have to imagine that like you had a fair amount of skepticism, especially at the scale you operate at. Like, how did you vet some of these tools before you kind of bought in?
Yeah, a lot of it is us borrowing technology that's proven in other crops and being one of the first ones to bring it to cannabis. I think there's a lot more examples of that than of us inventing something from whole cloth, right? So like the ebb and flood floors, amazing tool, allows us, we're doing 100,000 clones a week right now, right? So to grow the teams, to support the greenhouse flower production, that the alternative is watering 100,000 plants by hand when you're getting the leaves wet and it's inconsistent with what you're getting to the roof, and it takes a ton of labor. You can put emitters in there. That's 100,000 times in and 100,000 times out. A second's worth like 80 grand to us because of our scale. So saving that time is a no-brainer. And we looked to agriculture and say, hey, there's other people that handle millions of plants a year. How do they do that? And borrowed that technology. So we're more cannabis appliers than we are inventors of technology, if that makes sense.
It does. How did you come up with that figure? 1 second is worth 80 grand to you.
So it full build out with a number of plants that we're processing. If I can say, basically how much labor goes into that. If we can save a second at that scale times that many plants, it adds up to a pretty, basically if you can save a second times 10 to 12 million plants, what's that worth? And it's a pretty good size number.
No, that's incredible. Like I'm only curious because I've been looking for an equation like that because I've seen similar in like the automotive industry. But thank you for that. I apologize for stealing it and using it for.
Sure thing, no problem.
How did the new greenhouse project come to fruition? Like, when did you realize that was going to be your next big project?
So I've been hunting that greenhouse since probably 2018, a long time, and far before we actually would have known what to do with it. So in many ways, thankful for the universe for making it a challenge, because during that challenge, I learned a lot. I don't know what would have happened if I got what I thought I wanted when I thought I wanted it, because we had a lot that we needed to learn between 2018 and 2022 when we actually started that up. We're actually just a week ago was the 2-year anniversary of having plants there. So I identified it early because it was built for vegetables in an amazing climate. And vegetables are oftentimes, tomatoes and cucumbers are oftentimes, kind of 5 to 10% margin businesses. So the entire thing is built for quality, consistency, and cost, which is, again, as I mentioned, our mantra. And so we don't want it for 5% margins. We want it for 55% margins, but the thinking is the same. So it was in the right climate with labor, with water, with a facility that was designed for efficiency and consistent year-round production. At the time, the big holdup was cannabis cultivation was not allowed in Ventura. So that was the first project. And, we worked with some folks and we got things put on the ballot and the voters agreed with us. And so that opened the door for cannabis cultivation. Then the next project was getting the company together and ready for this, taking it public to raise the money, and then being able to buy the greenhouse. So it took a lot of things to go right to make that happen. And, here we are 6 years later and just starting the first harvest of our second flower greenhouse. So pretty awesome to look back and see the path that has brought us to today.
Was it a substantial undertaking in terms of retrofitting the facility to meet your needs?
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about millions of square feet, there is nothing insubstantial, right? There's like even something that costs $1 a square foot costs millions of dollars at that scale. So again, it's almost hard to picture in your mind what a 20-acre structure looks like, but we've got 6 of them.
How would you describe the state of cannabis in California?
Let's see. So my glass half full perspective is we have 26, 27 years of medical cannabis in California, Prop 215. So we have awesome examples of how well it can work because it did work that well. We had thriving dispensaries, brands, patients were getting their medicine, consumers were having alternatives to pharmaceuticals and alcohol and things like that. So we know how well it can work. The good news, bad news is it's not working that as well today, but we broke it, which means we can fix it, and I think we will. So I think cultivation had its reconciliation a couple of years ago. It has now stabilized to a large degree. I think retail and the brands are going through the same kind of reconciling now. But at the end of the day, people have been using cannabis for 6,000 years. They've been buying it since the price was going to jail. I don't think it's a fad. I think more and more people are using it. I think more and more people are finding the benefits. So I don't think it's going to go away. And it's just a matter of the market maturing to a point where, we reach stability and more predictability. But at the end of the day, we're building, a new industry or converting an industry that was kind of under the table to something that is front and center. And nobody said that was going to be easy. And so we shouldn't expect it to be. And those who are committed to seeing it through to the end will be here. And I think the future is bright.
In your opinion, what broke the market and what efforts are working to rebuild it?
It's really easy. It's too much regulation, too many taxes, and not enough retail stores. That's for some reason, cannabis even today exists in this place where the stigma is it's insane, right? I mean, there's no rational basis for cannabis to be treated the way it is, right? No recorded deaths, medicine for many people. At this point, the Health and Human Services, the FDA, recognizes that cannabis has medical benefits, right? Like there is no debate for any rational scientist. You can debate how well does it work, or how do we quantify it, or what are the methods of action, right? But like people by the tens and hundreds of thousands will tell you they get relief from cannabis, right? So yet, you compare it to alcohol and tobacco, which no one will debate, kills hundreds of thousands of people. And what do? What's a bar? A bar is essentially a shrine to alcohol, right? And there's 11,000 liquor stores in California. There's 77,000 places you can buy a cocktail, and it kills people, and everyone knows it. Cannabis, which arguably doesn't kill anybody, has 1,000 places, and they have to be set back a minimum of blah, 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 blah. They're, pay 6% taxes and 15% excise. And, it's like, and we tax it to death, right? Alcohol, the excise tax on a bottle of wine is about 15 cents, 15 cents. The excise tax on a 1 gram joint is $1.15, right? So you've got something that kills people by the hundreds of thousands and you tax it 15 cents. And you've got something that saves people in as medicine and you tax it at 10x the rate, and make it really hard for people to get. That makes no sense. And that's what we do. And when we quit doing that and we quit treating cannabis like it's a vice and start treating it like the medicine or the fun that it can be, I think that stigma will go away, and I think everything will go back to working great.
Is California still having issues with the illicit market? And in your opinion, has that been improving?
The illicit market's going to be there until we offer consumers a better value than it does. So, is there still an illicit market? Absolutely. It's probably 3 times as big as the license market. But at the end of the day, when 65% of the municipalities don't have a legal dispensary, and dollar of every three that consumers spend goes to tax, and the regulations make it so that people have a hard time focusing on creating the highest quality product, and the illicit market doesn't have any of those frictions, it's going to continue to exist. So if we brought down taxes and we increased retail, I think you'd see what you see in many other places, Montana, Colorado, where they have lower taxes and more retail access, and they've captured a lot more of the market into the license side, which is good for everybody. When we're ready to, do that, then I think we'll see those same results.
When it comes to overregulation, in your opinion, what's the low-hanging fruit, the changes that could be made fairly easily that could make a big change?
I mean, I would two things: less taxes, more retail.
Yeah.
Do that, and I think you'll solve 80% of the problem.
Okay. You said that you had worked with some of your friends who you've kind of been in the cannabis industry for 25 years. Like, do you guys ever just hang out and kind of are beside yourself as to where you are now in terms of like the cannabis industry?
Yeah, I mean, it is crazy. We're pretty focused on, what do we need to do today to keep growing and keep advancing. So we probably don't do enough time, smelling the buds, I guess in this case it would be. But it is, we've got a whole crew. One of the guys in our sales department was a guy I used to buy weed from in high school. One of our head growers is a guy that went to high school with and been growing with for 20 years. The manager that helped start the first 3 pharmacies with me is been one of my best friends since we were 14, right? So we have this amazing crew of, lots of old friendships together. And I think, it's super important to the chemistry of a team that they've got, that shared connections. And again, everybody in that, in that list and many others really love what we're doing, and they love weed, and they believe that we're helping make the world a better place with the work that we do. So, it is, you walk through the greenhouse and say, holy shit, how did we get here? But that usually is, 10 seconds of our day. And then the other 23 hours and 59 minutes is how do we get to where we really believe we should go, which is cannabis is descheduled, and we're growing the most consumed cannabis brands on the planet here in California and legally shipping them to the rest of the country and hopefully the world.
Were you apprehensive when it came to getting into the dispensary side of the business?
No, I mean, not at the time, especially, right? It's I think it's fun. I think it's where you get the connection to the consumer, and where you can really see the buds hit the joint or in the bowl or whatever it would be. Like that's at the end of the day, what we're really trying to do is make people feel better with plants, and that's that connection to the customer. So I don't think retail is not the future for us, but we've got 10 stores. And I love them because it allows us to help make better and better products. And I think at the end of the day, that is the future for us. Everything in cannabis starts with a plant, and we're really good at growing the plant and turning it into products. And the dispensaries become a platform for us to develop those products, which today is only in California, but eventually I think is the rest of the planet.
When you receive that feedback from customers, is it difficult to pivot or to change just as a result of your scale?
I mean, there's, we don't take things lightly. When we make changes, they're usually pretty well reasoned. I don't think that's a bad thing. Apple doesn't just do things on a whim either. They think through things. And I like it because we control the full stack. So if we have, feedback from a store or bud tender or consumer or patient, and they say, man, I really wish we had this, right? If we hear that a few times, we can say, oh, okay, well, oh, by the way, the data supports that. Let's look at the analytics of our POS system. Let's look at what people are doing in the market. Let's have our marketing team take a look and say, oh, yeah, because these guys were right. Let's try that. Now let's try something. Let's do a beta product, and we'll just launch it in our stores and see what the feedback is and say, oh, okay, we almost got it, but not quite. So here's a little tweak that we do. Here's another little tweak. Now version 3, nailed it. Now it's time to bring that to the rest of the market. California is the biggest market in the country. It's got the most discerning consumer. It's the most competitive from a price point of view. So now if the California market accepts it, and between Allswell and Glass House, if you put those together, that's the most consumed flower in the state of California. Our two brands that's the most units of any flower sold in California. So that means it resonates, right? Like now you've got something in California. Now we just kind of keep grinding. Can we bring the price down? Can we bring the quality up? Can we keep that cycle going? Eventually the walls are going to come down too. And if it wins in California, it's going to win everywhere else. The inverse of that is not true. So I like training at altitude. You don't do it because it's fun. You do it because when you meet folks that didn't, you win.
With California being such a mature market, what opportunities do you see that are still available as possible different slivers of the market that you could move into?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're so early in this. I imagine maybe we're done with batting practice, but I'm not sure we're out of the first inning yet. So I think everything's an opportunity right now. We haven't even begun to get there. I mean, we just have hopefully it works. So this is our new Allswell pre-rolls. They're just a new product out there. I really like the form factor on them. They got a great crutch. They have a higher quality. They're some of the most, highest value out there in the market. Like that's a pre-roll, and we're still innovating and coming up with stuff that's different than what's in the market, right? Like that's 101, and we haven't even finalized that. So I think there's going to be amazing opportunities, and we're just getting started.
When it comes to policy, were you encouraged by things like the vice president's recent roundtable on legalization?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to not be encouraged by it, right? Like, arguably, it's the biggest thing that's happened in cannabis reform or normalization yet, right? A president mentioning it in the State of the Union, that's a pretty big deal, right? The vice president coming out and saying on camera that we need to reschedule and off camera that we need to legalize, pretty big deal. That said, it's talk, not action, and not results. And what matters are the results. It's great to hear them talking about getting people out of jail or prison. It's disheartening to hear the qualifiers of possession, right? There's one question to ask any politician that says that: how many people have you let out of a cage? The answer to that for Biden and Harris is still 0. Now, rather have them talk about it than not talk about it, but the scoreboard reads the score, and the score is still 0 for them. So when they decide to start using the power that they have to get nonviolent cannabis prisoners out of the cage that they currently live in, I'll be a lot more encouraged, but I'm not going to look incrementalism in the mouth and get upset because thoughts become action, become words, become actions. And it's great that we've moved from the thoughts to the word stage, and I can't wait till we get to the action and result stage.
No, I had a similar reaction to the State of the Union where it was like, oh, there we go. And then it was like the come to reality, like, all right, but maybe just do what you said you were already going to do, and then let's move on from there. But I mean, it was, yeah.
Yeah, you can't be mad at the talk, but you can be mad or upset or frustrated by the lack of action. I mean, that we're sitting here 50 years into a drug war that is admittedly, by their own words, a racist war to target people with black and brown skin. And now we have the science to support what we already knew, which was there was no other basis for it. And yet we can't get our, head out of our ass to actually make a change. Canada legalized, took them 2 years to federally legalize. Germany just decriminalized, right? So, at this point, we probably should have some shame about the fact that we are still one of the most incarcerating countries on the planet, and many of those stem from a war on drugs that has produced no valuable results.
I know that it's relatively cliche in the industry now, but do you have I know it's a moving target as well. Do you have an idea or a thought as to when that action might actually take place and federal legalization might begin?
Let's see. So I think it's firmly a when, not if. I don't think there's a question on where we're going to end up. The question is the timing. Schedule 3 seems to be building pretty solid consensus. And State of the Union, Kamala Harris coming out, the request to Health and Human Services, the FDA's opinion of moving it to Schedule 3. You know, I assume just as a political move, if you're Biden, you're not going to bring these things up and try and use it to bolster your reelection bid and then land on your face. So I assume that means that they're pushing pretty hard to have that happen. And Schedule 3 would be a very big deal from the point of view that it would show the direction we're going. It would ease 280E, which is a heavy tax burden that cannabis businesses have. I think it would probably have a bunch of other cascading effects as well. It does not get anybody out of prison, so that is a big hole in it. But it is a step in the right direction. So I think that's likely to happen in the next few months here. I think everything that's happened so far has been led by the states, and that's not going to stop. So I think interstate commerce pacts, even if it's kind of just symbolic, will likely happen. You can see Pennsylvania, Arizona, New Jersey, California, Oregon, Washington, District of Columbia, all talking about interstate commerce because they all know it's the better thing for their citizens. It's better for the environment. So I do think we're going to start to see that move. Full legalization, we should deschedule. We should take it off. It should be treated like at least no worse than alcohol. 5 years. There's my answer. 5 years, we'll have federal legalization.
Do you think interstate commerce, do you think small growers or cultivators in various states will be able to survive interstate commerce?
I think they're going to thrive in interstate commerce. I mean, I looked at Northern California and the growers up in Humboldt and Mendocino, many of them limited to 10,000 square feet of canopy. That's a really hard business to run when you're stuck in the state of California, right? If you could open up direct to consumer, I think all of those guys would thrive. They'd thrive in the same way that small independent brewers or wineries do. Like what they need is they need the market of the country who loves their product, right? If you're trying a 10,000 square foot grow, let's say you're doing 1,000 pounds out of that, that's 128,000 eighths. Like if you have the country as your market, you could sell to someone who wants an indica sativa hybrid. You don't even need 50,000 customers who want one of each category of your strain to sell out your entire grow. If you do that at $50 or $60 an eighth delivered direct to the consumer, that's a $6 to $7 million business, right? Like that's a win for a family farm, right? Mm-hmm. That same grow in the state of California, I mean, almost impossible. So I think direct to consumer and interstate commerce is the solution for great growers everywhere.
So you think that's sort of like similar to the craft brewer model, the craft growers will thrive under federal legalization?
If you are excellent in whatever lane that you're in, I think the thing you want the most is the least regulations and the broadest market, and that is the recipe for success. So if you're growing amazing, living soil, regenerative, Mendocino weed with heirloom genetics, there is absolutely a market in our country for that. Finding that market stuck in one state can be hard, especially with distribution and taxes and all that. But there's absolutely a market for that, just like there's a market for, high peanut butter stout, beer, right? Like it may not be what's selling at 7-Eleven, but there's certainly people who appreciate quality of all kinds out there. And that's what we should be doing, is reducing as much friction as possible to connect those growers with the people who enjoy the medicine they grow.
Now, I understand that you just had your first harvest off of a new greenhouse, but what are the future plans to continue growing the business?
Yes, I mean, our take is basically we want to keep growing the best weed we can at the best value for the consumer as possible and the lowest environmental impact. As the market matures, consumption's not really going down. We are seeing people drop out of the supply side. So, we'll continue producing as long as the market continues to appreciate what we grow. We will expand when it makes sense. We're optimistic and hopeful for things like interstate commerce or interstate packs, but absolutely nothing that we're doing or any of our budgeting or forecasting assumes that any of that happens. We do think it will happen, but no idea when. So trying to guess the timing is a fool's errand. So I think, we've got 3 more greenhouses currently growing tomatoes and cucumbers, and I would much rather be growing cannabis there. So as soon as it makes sense in the market to bring those online, we'll be doing that as quick as we can.
Do you already have your eyes on those specific greenhouses?
Yeah, the next one actually is going to be a particularly fun one. It has 11,000 1,000-watt lights in it. So we'll be able to take all that we get from Mother Nature and the natural sun, but also add supplemental light. So we won't throw anything away like you would in a warehouse. We'll take everything we got, and then we'll be able to add this light so that we can have take the seasonality out, grow higher yields, grow more potent, grow denser buds. It's really going to be kind of the best of both worlds. So that'll be a first for us, and I'm excited for that project.
Has there been any part of the industry that, just given the scale and the type of business you operate, you haven't been able to participate in?
I think that no one can be all things to all people, right? And there's I got a buddy Keith at Fig Farms. He grows amazing indoor weed, great genetics, routinely winning competitions. I enjoy smoking his weed. Like that's not us, and we're not trying to be that. And I would encourage anybody, like, don't try and out glass house. Be the best version of you. And likewise, I'm certainly not trying to out big farms. I'm trying to be the best version of us. And so, we've got our lane, and we're trying to be the best that we can in it. And I think that's what everybody should do. So, certainly we don't have a beverage, for example. I don't know much about beverages today, so we don't have a beverage. We're not doing creams. We're doing, Plus Gummies is our edibles brand. Allswell Gummies is a value edibles brand. Allswell Flower, Glasshouse Farms. We have an amazing tincture, which, for those looking for medicine, is one of my favorites. But we're trying to stay in the lanes where we can deliver, a special value to the consumers and not waste our time or theirs in areas that we can't.
For cannabis operators, social media recently opened up, or, at least became a little bit more accepting of cannabis businesses. Could you speak a little bit to the importance of using social media for cannabis operators to find new customers and potentially grow the business?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because, for example, Instagram always seems like it's on the hunt, taking down posts and stuff like that. But then all of a sudden, of course, there's people advertising mushrooms on there now, and they seem to be fine with that. So it's a real weird. I feel like, again, cannabis has gotten kind of the short end of the stick, or you got farm built gummies with the exact same compound and the exact same psychoactive properties, and they're being advertised. So for us, the social media is less about advertising, more about just kind of building awareness. And I hope the walls fall down there too, because again, if you're advertising things like alcohol and stuff like that, which they do, that's something that's far more dangerous, far more negative, and yet we again put it on kind of this pedestal. And I think cannabis should be living above that, certainly not below it. So I hope we can use those tools more and more in the future.
Well, Graham, I really do appreciate you taking the time, and honestly, the scale of your work is just incredible. But before we get out of here, is there anything else that you want to make sure the Cannabis Equipment News audience knows about yourself or Glass House?
Let's see, what would I say? And thank you very much for having us. It's been great to be here. We got to get you by for a tour of the farm at some point. If you want to come see it in person, I think you'd enjoy it.
I would love that.
I think a couple of things. One is, as I mentioned, we got big by starting small. We've been loving the plant for a long time. There's a lot of real authentic weed lovers and stoners in this company. And our goal is to make the world a better place by bringing as much cannabis to as many people as possible, and doing it in an environmentally friendly and affordable way. That's helping people feel better with plants is really what we're all about. I think I'd ask everybody to join us in the call for getting those 2,700 cannabis prisoners of war who are in prison in a cage for a nonviolent cannabis offense, which isn't really an offense. And the fact that they can be in there and, they could even buy stock in a company like ours and make money for doing the same thing that they're in prison for is like the hypocrisy of that. I shouldn't allow any of us to sleep well at night until it's fixed. So I know there's a lot of different opinions in cannabis. Hopefully there's no two sides of the coin to that one. And that's something that everybody, consumer to operators to advocates, can get behind to help right that wrong, because none of us should rest until it is.
Graham, I definitely agree with you. And thank you again for taking the time, man. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, David. It's great chatting.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. Hit the subscribe button right below. If you want to reach out, you can reach me at David@Cannabis Equipment News with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. All right. For Graham Farrar, co-founder, president, and chief cannabis officer with Glass House, I'm David Manti. This is the Cannabis Equipment News podcast. We'll see you next week.